India has earlier given a befitting reply to Canada after an official communication named Indian diplomat as a person of interest in Khalistan terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing. In response, India has decided to downgrade its ties and withdraw its officials from Canada, including the Indian High Commissioner. The decision came after MEA summoned the Canadian charge d'affaires and unequivocally declared that baseless targeting of Indian High Commissioner and other diplomats and officials in Canada was completely unacceptable.
Canadian government and Prime Minister Trudeau are in the habit of throwing these wild allegations and insinuations against India. We have seen that in the wake of a murder of one of the terrorists, Nijjar, the Canadian government accused India without providing any shred of evidence. They had also at the time accused an Indian diplomat, which resulted in India taking counteraction and reducing the number of their excessive staff.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, Tuhin Sinha is with us. In fact, other panelists will be joining us in just a few moments. Tuhin Sinha, massive decision over here, perhaps for the first time that this kind of an action being taken by the union government. And what's very clear is that the kind of claims, the kind of allegations that they have made with Sanjay Verma, the Indian High Commissioner, there being called a person of interest, very clearly India has decided that they're not going to take this lying low.
Well, absolutely, Madhav. Canada has really brought this upon itself. You know, from the time that Hardeep Nijjar was assassinated, Canada has been making baseless and wild allegations against India, indicating that India is responsible. But in the last 1 year and 2 months, it all started, I think, in September 2023. In the last 13 months, Canada has not been able to provide a shred of evidence in this regard. You know, the animosity, I would say, goes back, way back to 1982. If you remember, Indira Gandhi had very pointedly sought the extradition of a terrorist, Talwinder Parmar, if I'm not mistaken. And the Prime Minister of Canada then, Pierre Trudeau, who happens to be, who was the father of Justin Trudeau, refused to extradite that terrorist. Just 3 years later, that terrorist was the chief conspirator in the Kanishk air bombing, which led to the death of 329 people. So, you know, India and Canada really have a bit of a history over here. But sadly, from the time that Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister of Canada, this has gone to another level due to his irresponsible behavior. In 2018, when he came to India, he felicitated another Khalistani convicted criminal, Jaspal Atwal, in India. That led to another round of deterioration. In fact, you know, the way Khalistani processions, which glorify the killings of Indira Gandhi in Canada, have become commonplace, have become normalized in Canada, only shows the kind of pro-Khalistani mindset of Justin Trudeau. So if you ask me, this was waiting to happen. And yes, the fact that, you know, he would call up Mr. Verma, you know, the Indian High Commissioner, who has impeccable track record, and expect India to name him as interested party, which basically means that he would be robbed of his diplomatic immunity. This was not something which India was going to take lying low.
Right. So in fact, let me bring in Professor Madhav Nalapat, who's also joining us. He's an expert in geopolitics. Professor Nalapat, you know, the question that many are asking is this. The question is that if Canada did have proof of any kind of role of India, why has it not come out in the public domain thus far? We are told that there may be a press conference later in the day where they may be putting out some information. But if they did indeed have this kind of information, why do you think they've kept it so close to their cards so close to their chest?
Well, I'd like to say that the fact of the matter is that if you look at all kinds of fake information is put out, fake evidence is put out, and one has to be extremely careful before one comes to any conclusion. We have all seen the effect of AI-generated fake news and AI-generated stories and documents. Very, very original-looking documents can also be brought out. Voices can be reproduced exactly I mean, through the use of AI, we can reproduce your voice saying the most atrocious things. And the BJP spokesperson saying the most atrocious things about his party. That's very simple. Now, my point is, very frankly, that I am really surprised because the United States also has got its own share of people who don't like the way Prime Minister Modi has stood up to any kind of efforts at lobbying or even, if I may say so, bullying. He is not a person who will take bullying lightly. He will respond back, as indeed has happened in this particular case. And in that situation, possibly those elements in the US who are gunning for Prime Minister Modi are firing from the shoulder of Justin Trudeau. Because the reality of the situation is, what Justin Trudeau is doing is taking an axe, not just to India-Canada relations where he's the Prime Minister. That's a political relationship. I mean, frankly, the India-Canada relationship is broad, it's deep, it's never going to go away, and it's going to improve day by day, in effect. But the fact is, he's he's trying to do his best to upset India's relations with the Western powers. Now, you and I know the situation in the Indo-Pacific. We know the situation confronting, say, you talk about Taiwan, you talk about Indonesia, you talk about Vietnam, you talk about the effort to turn the ASEAN Sea into a Chinese lake. You see the kind of expansionism that's taking place. Here again, Prime Minister Modi is very firm. Soldiers have been deployed across the border. The Air Force has been deployed in forward bases. And the Indian Navy is now rigorously patrolling. And guess the country with which the Indian Navy is patrolling the most. Guess the country that the Indian Armed Forces are having the most drills. The United States of America.
Okay.
And
okay.
elements of the United States of America.
Professor Nalapat, I'm just going to ask you to hold on to your thoughts because we have some more information coming in, and this is a very interesting report of the Washington Post. In fact, some would find it rather strange here in India. And this is a Washington Post report that has said that the role of Lawrence Bishnoi, this is a theory that's now being floated, that Lawrence Bishnoi was in fact responsible for some of those killings there, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, and that diplomats gathered intelligence on separatists. RNAW identifies targets for attacks, and these have been carried out by the Bishnoi gang. This is what the Washington Post is reporting, and this is as far as the Sukhdool killing is concerned. Let's go across to Bhavtosh. Bhavtosh, this is a rather strange sort of a report which actually gives a lot of credence to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, which we've all imagined would be a gang that just has its influence within Indian jurisdiction. But now, as per these reports, apparently they have the powers to carry out targeted killings in Canada as well.
Well, Madhav, a bit of background as far as this killing is concerned. This happened on 21st September last year, and Sukhdool Singh was killed in Winnipeg. And as soon as he was killed, there was a post that was put out by Lawrence Bishnoi's gang, purportedly claiming that they are responsible, but they also said this is because of a long-standing rivalry that they had with him. Now, Sukhdool Singh was someone who had a long history of criminal activities. He had 18 criminal cases here. And in a dossier that was sent by India to Canada, they had specifically mentioned that action should be taken against him and that he should be deported back. He was among the several criminals, including Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who is a listed terrorist. Now, India had in fact asked that they should be sent back to India so that they can face trial. On 20th September, India in fact had, NIA had in fact asked people to give details about their properties. He was gunned down in Winnipeg. Now, what this report had said is that Lawrence Bishnoi is one who is responsible for his killing, but they did not give any evidence how Lawrence Bishnoi is linked to Indian diplomats, how he is responsible for his killing. And the report in fact mentioned that RNAW had asked Lawrence Bishnoi to kill Sukhdool Singh, and this is what the report said. But one must remember that this is a long-standing rivalry between different gangs, and they have carried out killings, and Canada is paying for the fact that simply because they have provided refuge to these gangsters, whether it's Goldie Barar, whether it's Hardeep Dalla, or for that matter Lawrence Bishnoi gang members, and they are Canada is paying price for providing refuge to these gangsters.
Bhavtosh, for that update. And in fact, let's quickly take this across to our other guests. Joining us, we have Mr. Terry Milowski, who's a senior Canadian journalist, joining us on the broadcast. Terry Milowski, many here in India would find this absolutely strange that you have a situation where, you know, international media are reporting, quoting Canadian sources, that all of this is being done by an Indian gangster who appears to have a considerable influence on Canadian soil.
It would be the first Indian gangster to have considerable influence in Canada. It is an unfortunate fact that the Canadian immigration system has allowed a lot of people through the net, which now we regret. And the machinations around these assassinations do seem more likely to include criminal operatives, gangsters, than senior diplomats. And I say that advisedly, I think, because the RCMP, which is a non-political organization, has arrested and charged 4 Indian origin individuals, all young, in their 20s, gangsters, again, apolitical, it seems, in the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So Canada is certainly making the allegation, the RCMP at any rate, the police are making the allegation that these criminal elements were involved in the murder. And of course, what we're waiting for is the other shoe to drop. That there was some political connection, that there was some connection between these gangsters were, put it briefly, were paid in some way by the Indian government or an official, the Indian government. Bear in mind also that there is actual evidence on the table. Trudeau's getting hell on all sides for not producing evidence that Indian diplomats were involved. Well, at the moment, so far, it's the Indian side that is saying the Canadians are alleging that Indian diplomats were involved in the Nijjar assassination. We haven't heard that.
Mr. Milowski, I'm just going to bring in some more breaking news that's coming in. In fact, a lot of developments coming in at this point of time. In fact, Canada continuing to whine and lie about criminal activity by agents of India. Threats to security of Canadians. They felt that it's imperative to confront India, and that this is, in fact, as far as Canada's citizen shield, that's being given to the K Brigade, and saying that there are serious findings uncovered in the probe that was conducted by Canada. Let me quickly bring in Rishabh on this. Rishabh, this is the evidence that is being cited by Canada. Have they brought out any evidence? Have they put out any evidence or proof to back up these rather strong claims?
If we talk about these claims have been made by RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, in a press conference which has just concluded in Ottawa. As of now, they have only spoken about that we have given, we have given the proof to India. We have credible evidence. As of now, they haven't put forward those allegations. They just say that we have proof to link the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar to the agents of Indian government. As of now, no proof has been put forward. Again, while they say that yes, we have given proof to government of India and whatnot, even Mr. Wheeler, the charge day affair, erstwhile charge day affair for that matter, now he has been expelled. When he came out of South Block, he said that we have given the much anticipated proof to India. But as of now, Canada has not made it public that what are the proofs that they are talking about that they have given to India.
Right. Let me quickly, in fact, thanks so much for that update there, Rishabh. Let me quickly take this back to Professor Madhav Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, this is a rather bizarre claim, many would say. The fact that they linked an Indian gangster like Lawrence Bishnoi and are connecting that with what they are alleging is activity by RNAW agents, and of course linking all of this to the Indian diplomats there in Canada as well. It's rather unprecedented to see this kind of a charge being made, and even for a host country to call the High Commissioner of another country a person of interest in such matters.
Well, I'd like to say what India has done is to basically tell the Canadian Deputy High Commissioner to leave, as well as other senior diplomats who have been frankly in touch in Canada, in other parts of the world, including, if I may say so, some other countries in the Commonwealth, and elements that are known to be funding and abetting terrorism in India. Now, quite frankly, these are persons of interest. Quite frankly, there's a very strong case for basically revoking their diplomatic immunity and hauling them up before a court of law. But India has not done that, because India has been throughout diplomatic in this, aware that Canada and India share very warm ties, the people of Canada and the people of India generally, and those warm ties should continue beyond the current administration, which is clearly serving the interests of some other group. Now, I want to say that I am astonished that the Canadian government is protecting terrorists, known people who have been involved in murder, mayhem, and the narcotics trade. And parts of Canada have become very difficult to go to for a law-abiding citizen. They are infested with drug addicts. The drug addiction is spreading throughout Canada, and the reason is the easy availability of drugs in Canada, unfortunately. And they say, oh, this is harmless. The fact is that very hard drugs are being there. You're seeing fentanyl, for example. China is sending fentanyl to the US and creating its own opium war with the US, and creating its own situation where you have so much of opium addiction in China in the past, 100 years ago. Now you've got fentanyl addiction in the US and, may I say, Canada. Right. So my Canadian friends should look at what's happening in Canada now. Yeah. Look at what the Trudeau government is blind to, which is the influence of these gangs, gangsters. And in
Let me put that question across, sir, to Anis Farooqui, senior Canadian journalist who's joining us. Anis Farooqui, is it a mere coincidence that it's in the run-up to the elections that all of this chatter, there has been talk about it for the last several years, but suddenly the issue flaring up like this in the midst of the run-up to the elections, is it nothing but a mere coincidence? And is it Mr. Trudeau, as the Indian government says, engaging in nothing but vote bank politics?
Was the case, then clearly his popularity would not be going dive down to the 33% at the moment. He's not gaining anything out of it. We must understand that these ethnic vote politics is basically, it's very sporadically spread across Canada. So it's not in one constituency that he's going to get number of seats. It's all across Canada. It's not going to help him a lot. The stats are showing that he's not gaining any popularity. Conservatives is way ahead of the game. NDP, Jagmeet Singh is, kind of king-making position as usual. So I don't think that he is doing it just to gain electoral win, but this is kind of a national interest and based on the security agencies' evidence provided to him. And it could have been any other prime minister who would be doing the same thing.
But Mr. Farooqui, to say that a gangster, somebody who's lodged in a jail in India, can effect killings far away in Canada, it sounds rather bizarre.
Well, obviously, I agree, but there are evidence, there are links with the local High Commission and consulate that were captured, and they have been presented to the Prime Minister and the cabinet and the opposition leaders. So they all kind of on the same page. It's not kind of a fabricated story that we Justin Trudeau one fine morning wakes up and say, I'm going to get some popularity out of it. It's not like that. So
where is this proof that you're talking about? Because we don't seem to know what this proof is, even now.
Well, obviously, it's a national matter of national interest, and it will be from the Global Affairs Department to the Ministry of External Affairs of India. In between those two people, there will be some exchange of dossiers. Soon you will see the evidence. And once the evidence say, what do we have to say about this?
Well, we've been hearing that for some years now. The evidence. We've been hearing that for some years now, Mr. Anis Farooqui. Unfortunately, the evidence hasn't really been revealed thus far. All right, Tuin wants to very quickly rebut you. Tuin Sinha. Very quickly, please. We have limited time.
Madhav, it's been 13 months now. It's been 13 months now that we have been hearing they have tons of evidence while they have not been able to provide an iota or a shred of evidence. So this character assassination of India had to stop. We have given them a long rope, and that rope had to be curtailed, which is what we have done.
Right.
In the
India
time
taking
to
decisive
come,
action there, Tuin, as you rightly put it. We'll have to leave it there. Professor Madhav Nalapat, Terry Milewski, Anis Farooqui. I'm sorry, gentlemen, completely out of time, but I'm afraid I don't think we've heard the last word yet on this controversy. Perhaps a lot more developments that can be expected up in coming days. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.